feelings, which kids get a kick out of this one by changing your voice and the characters in the book. And don't rush through it. You can talk about the pictures, having them define the shapes, the colors. That helps them with their pre-reading skills. As I told you in the beginning, that children learn by pictures. So every word that they can see in a picture, they can grasp and they can understand. So just realize that reading in those funny little different tones of voice is awesome. So just try to do that as much as possible, and let your child join in. Let them tell you about the book. Let them share their ideas of what they think is going on or what's coming up next. That really builds their language and things like that. And then it's okay to change the story. If there's something that you don't agree with, maybe pre-read this books before you actually read them to your child. And then if there's something, because I know right now there are things that are coming out that really and truly I don't like about how some of the authors are approaching some of the topics. So watch out for those kind of books. If you don't agree with that, I would say move on and make your own story up from that book. As well as help your child to relate to the story or character. I know a lot of us have lost loved ones, and sometimes our children don't understand. We tell them that they're asleep, and so they think they're just resting, which when in reality they've passed on. And children, they cope with things like that a lot better than we do because we've been around a lot longer, and children don't understand that aspect of life. So even if it's maybe not a person, maybe it's a close pet that you've had for a while, or such as that. So just be real with your child as much as possible. Now that Miss Link is in here, I'm going to stop with what I'm talking about, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to her. Thank you, Miss Lee.
I apologize for being here late. I had a student I was changing clothes with, and that can get messy sometimes. My name is Stephanie Lake. I'm the nurse for this campus and the intermediate campus as well as the middle school. So I get to actually see your kiddos when they're first here, and I've been here for, I believe this is my 4th year. So I've got to see the students that have been in Head Start. Some of them come back to Head Start the 2nd year and then go on up through kindergarten, and most of that first group is in 1st grade, I believe, now. Just basically what we want to touch on today is, and I think everybody has a copy of the book of what to do when your children or when your child is sick. A lot of this stuff is common sense. Some of the things in here are things that I would not have thought of, but they do make sense, and I'm not always the best at common sense. So, and I'm not going to read it word by word because y'all can definitely look over. I just want to touch on some topics that are in this actual book and see if y'all do have any questions. You know, one of the main things I know with my kids when they were younger was safety. You know, and if you hear them, you kind of know, okay, they're doing okay. It's when they get quiet that you're thinking, uh-oh, what are they into? And that can really, really change very quickly if there are things that they have access to that maybe you don't even realize they can get to, such as your chemicals under your sink in your kitchen, or even like toys that have choking hazards that you may not even be aware that the piece can come off, and all of a sudden you no longer hear them, and they're in there with something in their mouth or in their throat that could definitely turn out in a bad way. So in this book, in the very first of it, it has a place where you can put all your emergency phone numbers. I know most of us keep them in our phones now, which is great unless you're like me and your phone has died and you don't realize it's out, and now you need that number and you can't get to the phone to get the numbers that you're needing. So backup plan, have it written down all in one spot. Talking about safety tips, you know, obviously there are the normal things you think of, like your stove and hot things on your stove and fire safety and things that we've always had drilled into our head for a long time. But it goes back to too also the toys. You know, you don't realize how small a little windpipe is and how easy it is for a piece of a toy or a penny or a button or an acorn, because you know babies in their mouth, not even babies, but younger children, that's what they do. They explore with their mouth, even though you're just like, get it out of your mouth, and they're still doing it when you turn back around. So it's very simple for a child to get something in their windpipe and have their airway blocked. So that's definitely something we look for in the home, or anywhere for that matter. My kids could put anything in their mouth in a heartbeat. I'm like, are you serious? Spit it out now. General safety issues like bathtubs full of water. Most of us don't have bathtubs full of water sitting there all day long for your kid to go and fall into. But buckets, because you think about your babies, their heads are a lot bigger than the rest of their bodies, and it's very easy for them to go head first into something and not be able to get back out. I live in the country, I have chickens, I have, animals outside with buckets of water for them to drink out of, and, it would be very simple for, my children are much older now, but you think about just a bucket full of water for your pets, and that baby's head getting over-tipped in the water and they can't get back up. Stair safety, just general safety issues you want to watch out for, and just to protect your kids. My kids were not smart when they were young. My kids aren't that smart now, for that matter. But, talking about fever, most of us know how to take a temperature. What are we doing?
Page 10.
Oh, sorry. I'm like, what? Yay, woo, fever, okay. On page 10, talks about how to tell if your child has a fever. Most of the time, if your child is nonstop running and then they're slowing down, you know something has changed. You know something is up with them, and whether it's because they've been playing hard all day or they're just not acting themselves, checking their fever with a thermometer. It says in here, never use a glass thermometer to take a rectal temperature. Okay, how many of us even have glass thermometers anymore? Does anybody even use glass thermometers anymore? I mean, I can remember in high school shaking that glass thermometer down, putting it up against the light bulb because I didn't want to go to school that day. My mom had her back to me and stick it under my tongue and burning underneath my tongue, and I looked and I was like, oh, 105, I better get that down, otherwise she's gonna take me to the hospital, So pretty much glass thermometers, not really an issue anymore. I don't think at this age a lot of y'all are doing rectal temps on your kids, correct? My favorite, armpit, every time. Most of the digital thermometers now have it where you can actually change it to axillary, which is under the arm. Otherwise, you add, I think it's like 1.8 degrees if it's just a regular thermometer under the arm. 98.6 is considered normal for most people. Some people run lower, some people run a little higher. It's just, you know your kid better than anybody else. You know how your baby is and what their temperature and how they act normally is. Treating fever. Okay, so how to tell if your child has a fever with a thermometer. You used to do the lips on the forehead and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't really work. You kind of go, oh wow, they're on fire, but they better check their temperature. Getting a temperature down, aspirin. I don't think anybody really uses aspirin a lot any longer for their children anyhow, but I'll just say that aspirin can cause what's called Ray's syndrome, which is damage to the liver and to the brain. I was looking it up earlier because I'm the first one to tell you I don't know about everything, but I know how to Google stuff. And it talks about how it interferes with the fatty acid, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I just know that lots of aspirin, Ray's syndrome, damage to the heart, damage to the liver, damage to the kidneys, the brain, everything. So just stay away from aspirin is pretty much the general understanding with that one. Tylenol is the go-to for fever treatment unless there's a contraindication with your baby. Advil, of course, or acetaminophen, you can alternate those two. If you have a fever that won't break, Tylenol, and then 4 hours you can give Advil, and then you keep on rotating that until the fever does get under control. Have any of y'all experienced a fever with your baby that you just couldn't get to come down? Yeah, I mean, it's scary, because you're like, oh my God, I've given them all the medicine I can give them, and their fever still is staying strong. And also reading a thermometer now is a lot easier than when you had the shakedown one, you had to hold it just right and see it. Because digital readout, it tells you, and it talks in the book on page 12 about, the difference between 100.2 and 102, how you can read that differently on the digital thermometer now. So as far as taking temperature, everybody pretty good with that? Anybody ever have a problem with, putting it under the arm and holding them still long enough to get it to read? Everybody good? Okay. So taking the temperature versus treatment. Tylenol's the number one go-to, followed with Advil. And of course they have the children's. I know I went to the store to get something for up here, and there were like 50,000 different types of medicine, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know which one to get. once again, Google, you know, and I always buy the generic stuff anyhow, cause it's the same stuff, but acetaminophen, ibuprofen, Tylenol, Advil, kind of thing. And you know, when your baby has a fever, it's because of the fact that it's trying to burn off or kill an infection or something else going on, whether it be ears or reaction to the flu or any other kind of sickness. So, when it starts getting dangerous, it's when you have fever that you can't get down and it's running like 102 and greater, and you start running the risk of having febrile seizures. Things like that is if it's going on for a day or if it's so high and you can't get it down, that's when you would need to seek probably emergency room treatment. A little bit of fever, we've all had fever. We all know you take medicine and it goes away. If it's continuing with your child, that's when you want to seek emergency medical help if you can't get it down. And that goes back.
I got a set of twins, and no matter how much I try to keep them separated and keep their hands washed and stuff, they always seem to get past whatever they got to each other.
Sure.
Always.
I can remember as a kid, well, my parents, one of us had chicken pox, we all had chicken
Yeah,
pox. You know,
I've
get it
never been
over
able
with
to
right then
keep
and
the
there.
infection with just one of them. They always end up both getting sick. With everything they've ever gotten, they both get sick.
Well, in that way too, though, you kind of get their immunity built up a little bit better, so you have them sick both at the same time and get done with it, and then they have that immunity after that. I couldn't imagine having 2 sick kids though. You know, one at a time was enough for me. I'm like, I need some medicine now. Y'all are just absolutely getting me here.
Yeah.
Over-the-counter medications. It talks on page 21 about different uses for different medicines. Goes back again to the aspirin. Don't give a child aspirin. There's no reason that you should ever give your baby aspirin unless your doctor says, hey, you know, there's a clotting issue or something like that. Then that's when you would want to give aspirin. There are a lot of medicines that actually have aspirin in them that you might not know aspirin is one of the ingredients. And I believe there's a handout that Miss Becky has provided to y'all. It's called Medications Containing Aspirin. I mean, there's a lot of different ones that have aspirin in them. I don't think any of y'all are going to give your toddlers or your babies BC powder. I'm pretty sure that's not happening. Or Midol, when something really crazy is going on. So that's just a list of things to keep away from. And I'm not going to go over every single one of them. Y'all can look at it on your own there. Measuring your medications. Did I get the dosage spoon, you know? When it says give them 1 teaspoon, I'm real quick just to grab a kitchen spoon and be like, that's good enough. But you know, my kid's 16 now, and so he takes pills anyhow, but when they're younger, it's important that you don't just grab that kitchen spoon because, well, you might think it's just a teaspoon. It may not be a teaspoon. That's why these are so useful, because you can get it right on the money of how much it's supposed to be. And when their bodies are so small, medicine, even if it's just a little bit more than a teaspoon, can affect them much more differently than an adult. So that's a good thing to use for measuring medicine. Of course, mine always spit most of it back out at me, but you get creative sometimes, right? Okay, so far this year, haven't had a lot of pink eye going on. I don't believe there's been anybody in Head Start with pink eye. I've had some in kindergarten, and it talks on page 41 about pink eye. If a child does have pink eye here at our campus, we require them to be seen by the physician and get antibiotic drops. Okay. That being said, I want to remind y'all that we have Teledoc, which is basically a computer screen in my office that once the permission slip is filled out on the computer by parents, I can call and schedule an appointment for your baby to be seen in my office face-to-face with the doctor on the computer screen. Y'all can be on pink eye. You'd have to be here in order to get the drops and bring them here. Once they start that first drop, if they have pink eye, they can stay. So say, you know, you're at work and you can't get away from work, and I'm like, hey, I think your baby has pink eye, they need to be seen, and you're like, I can't get in to see the doctor, it's so hard now with COVID and everything, you can't hardly get in there. I can say, hey, we can do a virtual visit up here. Medicaid is billed for it. If you don't have insurance, I think the most they charge is like $50 and they bill you, so you don't even have to have it up front. And that's been a really good thing with pink eye, because the doctor can look, they can see them with, I have the special tools, so they can look in their eyes, their nose, or ears, their throat, listen to their heart, everything. It's really cool. And that way they can just prescribe pink eye drops to the pharmacy, whichever pharmacy is on call, on list for y'all. And they can be called in, pick them up at lunch, drive them up here, we start it, and the baby gets to stay.
What about a flu vaccine?
As far as us giving them flu vaccines, we do not do flu vaccination here, no ma'am.
Okay.
If you're wanting to have your child have flu vaccine and you can't get in to see the physician, I know Walgreens does flu vaccines.
But not their age,
Walgreens, what about the Department of Health is really good about providing vaccinations for children.
Yeah, I can take them to the doctor. I just know that, I know that I've gotten a vaccine. Y'all had a little health fair one time here, and I got a vaccine then, a flu vaccine then.
Was it school sponsored?
It was a little health fair they had here, several years ago.
I don't know, since I've been here in the last 4 years, I don't think we've offered that to, we have a flu vaccination clinic for the employees, and actually this year we haven't even had one yet because of, and everybody gets tired of hearing that, because of COVID, it was
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so we haven't even had our flu clinic yet for our staff members.
Okay.
But I know, I didn't know what the age limit was on Walgreens, but I know the Texas Department of Health you call it there and go, hey, look, my child needs their second hepatitis A vaccine to stay in school, and they can schedule you and you can go there to have
Yeah.
immunizations done as well. That's a good thing to, look at Becky, has got the boo to the flu. And I don't know exactly what the age limits are with that.
8, I think 8 number.
Is it 8 number? Okay. So, okay, everybody good with pink eye? If your baby has pink eye, and I say, hey, they have pink eye, understand they can't just be over-the-counter drops from Walmart, because I would be tempted to do that too, but to keep everybody else safe too, because, kids are licking and touching and rubbing and everything, but if you have them at home and they do have pink eye, warm compresses to the eye help, they say keep the baby's hand out of their eye. Well, y'all, as well as I do that kids are gonna rub if it itches or if it burns. So that's just the main hand washing thing, is a little bit to not spread that from them to you, for that matter. Diarrhea, hey, there's a topic, right? My thought process on diarrhea is that it's your body's way of getting rid of whatever bad toxin or whatever virus or sickness is in your body. So where you want to watch and make sure they don't develop dehydration, just stopping the diarrhea completely, if your body's trying to eliminate an illness, main thing is to keep them hydrated. Keep your baby hydrated. If they become lethargic and they're not moving, or either they cry and there are no tears, or if they're not peeing, if your child goes to the restroom every couple hours and all of a sudden they're no longer urinating, that's a pretty good indicator that they're dehydrated, especially when they have had diarrhea. Obviously a baby can become dehydrated. I keep on saying baby, but y'all know I mean y'all children, because my babies are 16 and 24, but they're still my babies. So if they do develop diarrhea, the main thing is to maintain hydration. But there's also, what do they eat? Well, if they feel bad and they have diarrhea, I know if y'all have been sick, you're like, food, don't give it to me. I don't even want to think about eating anything right now. So if a child has diarrhea, maintain hydration. The Pedialyte is a real good one. Gatorade, yeah, but Gatorade has a lot of sodium in it. So Pedialyte is probably one of the better ones to go for. And they have generic brands of Pedialyte as well. Once they are able to eat, you want to do what's called BRAT, bananas, rice, apples, toast, because that helps also combat the diarrhea and slow it down some. If your baby isn't drinking anything and still has diarrhea and you can't, and they're lethargic, they're laying around feeling bad, that's when you look at going, oh, maybe I do need to take them to the physician's office and have them looked at. There's something else going on here aside from just a stomach bug that we can recoup from at home. Okay, so if they have several days of diarrhea, not drinking, not peeing, crying with no tears, that would be a indicator to take them to the physician. Same thing for vomiting, and if one of your kiddos has diarrhea or has vomiting, the rule of thumb here at the school is they have to be fever-free, vomit-free, and diarrhea-free for 24 hours before they're allowed to come back to class. That doesn't mean, yeah, I know he had fever yesterday, but I dosed him up on Tylenol this morning, so he's good because he has no fever now. It has to be no fever for 24 hours, even without medicine. I know as a working mom, when my kids were little, it was very tempting to go, here, take this Tylenol, go to school, just don't say anything. But it always, the better thing to do is to keep your child home until they feel better and they're not running fever. And it talks about vomiting on page 105. Obviously, if you see blood is there vomit, that's definitely an indicator to take the physician or even the emergency room.